A Mochi moment from Sadie, who writes, I'm not crying, you're crying. This is what I said during my first appointment with my physician at Mochi, because I didn't have to convince him I needed a GLP-1. He understood, and I felt supported, not judged. I came for the weight loss and stayed for the empathy. Thanks, Sadie. I'm Myra Ahmed, founder of Mochi Health. To find your Mochi moment, visit joinmochi.com.
Sadie is a Mochi member compensated for her story.
DSW, Designer Shoe Warehouse, is the one-stop shop for all your footwear needs. With sneakers, boots, and everything in between, for every style, mood, and occasion, you'll definitely find shoes that get you at prices that get your budget. DSW has what you need, but more importantly, they have what you didn't even know you wanted. You never know what you'll find at DSW. Find the shoes that get you at prices that get your budget at DSW stores or dsw.com.
All right. So we're back with Ken and Mike on My Uncle's Escaped Alcatraz. Cindy, unfortunately, is on deadline for another project, so she won't be joining us today. But today we're going to talk about a little bit about what was on that CD-ROM that Ken got from the DOJ. And then we're also going to kind of dive into some preliminary information about the television show. Can't tell you too much, but we can kind of, I know a lot of people have been asking about it online. We can kind of tease you with some information, but things are getting good. We're starting on it like today's day one. So it's going to be going from day one today, and we're really excited about it. Ken and I and Mike were just talking off air about how we're going to tackle this subject and what we're doing, and I think everybody's going to be pleasantly surprised on how it's going to be presented, and so we're excited. So Ken, tell us, just to re-rack for people who, if they haven't listened to the last week's podcast, what you received in the mail last week from the government.
Yeah, so several months ago, I really kind of started digging into the Mickey Cohen side of the story, and I knew there had to be like an FBI investigation that they did on Mickey Cohen. And so I started kind of digging more into his involvement that we know that he had with the escape. And so as I dug into his story and his investigation that the FBI was doing, I came across one document that I was so intrigued with. And it was a document where the FBI was noticing that there was an individual who would travel down into Mexico and then started traveling down into Brazil. And then every time that they came back to the U.S. and back to Mickey's house, they were noticing that this individual, and they documented that this individual was always going back to Mickey's house and somehow relaying some type of information to him. So when I saw that, the first thing that came to my mind was, okay, we know that Mickey Cohen had a farm in Mexico. We know that he took Candy Barr when she was in trouble with the law and hid her out at this farm in Mexico. Mm-hmm. We also know from Uncle Man that when he went to Alfred and he shared with Alfred that Mickey Cohen had set the brothers up with a contract and a boat, Alfred knew that this farm that they had gone to was in Mexico. He even kind of gives the general description of this area. And then later on, we hear about Fred Breezy talking about flying them into Mexico. He never says where he was flying them to, but he does indicate that he was just north of Mexico City, which is in this general area that was where Mickey Cohen owned his farm. Well, in this FBI report, not only did he have some type of connection to Mexico, but he also had a connection to Brazil, which is ultimately where the brothers went to, a farm in Brazil.
And let me stop you real quick. So this FBI file, was this prior to the escape or post the escape?
So this FBI file was dated in 1960, which was prior to him being charged and sent to Alcatraz, and also prior to the escape. So I always used to think about, okay, the brothers, I can understand them going to Mexico if Mickey Cohen had a farm. That made sense.
And also, Forrest was fluent in Spanish. He knew Spanish very well.
Who did?
I never understood.
Frank Morris.
Oh, Frank Morris.
Understood why they would have gone into Brazil. I've said this before. You don't just kind of walk into Brazil and show up. You don't know anybody. You don't have any connections, even though you might have some money. You don't just show up and all of a sudden you just purchase this farm. So when I read that connection with him in Brazil, knowing that Whitey Bulger had said in one of his letters, we, and I'm assuming him and the brothers and Frank Morris, had told Mickey Cohen, when you get out, go to Brazil, marry a local, have children, and you can never be extradited back. Somehow he had a connection to Brazil. So I wrote the DOJ and I said, I want this one piece of information, this one, all I was asking for was this one piece of the FBI unredacted. I want to know who was it that was going down into Mexico, going down into Brazil, and then coming back. I really want to know who that individual was. And so the Department of Justice sent me a CD-ROM. And I was like, oh my gosh, this has to be it. This has to be the information that I'm looking for. I was very hopeful. I didn't have a CD-ROM, as I said before. I went out and I purchased one. I had to actually buy it from Amazon. I had to wait for it to come in. No store around me had a CD-ROM that I could use to tie into my laptop. It's like one of the things of the past.
Yeah.
So when I finally got it, I hooked it up. First thing I did was drop that CD-ROM in there, and it wasn't what I expected. Every single file was still redacted. And in fact, it only went, so the FBI started recording information on Mickey Cohen back in like 1950. And it went all the way up to like 1958 was the last piece. I knew that there were other FBI files that went into the 1960s. They were not included on this FBI file. So I contacted the Department of Justice and I said, hey, you did not give me everything. And you did not even give me the document that I was asking for. And I wanted it unredacted. Well, their response was, okay, file an appeal, which I did. I filed an appeal. And I'm still waiting to hear back from them. Because I'm telling you, there's something about this one document that they did not even include on this CD-ROM that I believe is going to be very important in the discovery of what Mickey Cohen had in combination with Brazil. And I believe it will tie to the England brothers and Frank Morris. So right now I have submitted an appeal to the Department of Justice. At the same time, I went ahead and wrote another letter to the FBI Director, Kash Patel. I sent another letter to President Trump. I sent another letter to our governor, where I live in the state of Florida, DeSantis. And I also just recently sent another letter to our Attorney General in the state of Florida. I am begging them to share this information with me. So I am going to continue to writing a letter every single day if I have to, until someone responds to me and gives me the information that I want to know, which is, I want to know, I mean, you cannot tell me that information about Mickey Cohen is still redacted and restricted from the people when we know that he is dead.
Yeah.
So I am going to fight as hard as I can to find out this information, because I believe it has information that responds and is directly related to my uncle's travel down into Brazil.
Yeah. So let me just retrack what you just said. So initially you said, you found an FBI file that said that a guy that was showing up to Mickey Cohen's place in LA, that they were tracking him to going to Mexico and to South America and then back, and then he would show up at Mickey Cohen's place after that?
That is correct.
So there's a file that
it say South America, it said Brazil.
Brazil. So that you have a document that says that.
A document that shows that. An
Okay.
FBI report.
Okay. So did you send a copy of that document?
I sent that exact copy. I printed it out. I even highlighted it with a highlighter, and I said, I want this document, and I cited the FOIA request that as a citizen of the United States that I have a right to ask for this information. And what they sent me was a complete CD-ROM of the Mickey Cohen investigation, but only up until 1958.
Mm-hmm.
This document was dated in 1960. They investigated him all the way up until the point that he was convicted and sent to Alcatraz. And so there is a section of that investigation in the FBI reports that they failed to give me. And so when I contacted them, they said, file an appeal and request this information. I said, you damn right I will. And so I filed it the very next day. And I'm like one of these people. I'm going to pursue this until they either come and arrest me and tell me not to do this anymore.
You know what?
Or they tell me that you will never get it. I'm still going to request it.
You've become an Alcatraz Karen.
I'm okay with that.
Dog with the bone. Dog with the bone. Actually, I have the document that Ken is talking about, the heavily redacted one, that I'm just going to read real quick. That talks about
sure
connection. It's heavily redacted, so it's a little jumpy, but it's to somebody whose name is blocked out, who has been associated with Cohen, and who has been advised the Internal Revenue Service, Los Angeles, that he has $25,000 invested in Mickey Cohen's life story. Redacted on April 10th, 1959, Immigration and Naturalization investigator somebody advised somebody that there has been no additional information regarding alleged smuggling mentioned above or any participation on the part of Cohen uncovered. Somebody advised in the latter part of 1959, somebody, an individual whom he classified as a bodyguard, had been hanging around Rondelli's restaurant with Mickey Cohen during the month of November 1959, had made an airplane trip to Brazil, South America, and had been gone for a period of time of 3 or 4 days. And then it's redacted again. He was driving a new Cadillac belonging to somebody. Further aided a statement, somebody that whenever he goes to Mexico, a friend Mickey Cohen lends him a car, and it kind of goes off from there. But it does talk specifically that in November 59, that this person made a trip to Brazil, and he was gone for 3 or 4 days, and then he returns, and he's hanging out with Mickey Cohen.
So that kind of sort of validates what you talked about last week, that because we weren't sure whether or not, it's like the fact that the brothers went down there and that they bought this farm and stuff like that. So he might have had a footprint already down there.
Exactly right.
Or an operation already down there. Exactly right. And Mexico was too close. You know, it's a little too close for comfort because, you know, you can get over there really quick. Brazil was like the perfect place. Number one, that he can put those guys down there and they won't be bothered. And number two, if they do get discovered, it's going to be a bitch for them to get them out of there and extradite them. And, you know, and like Whitey said, you know, they got married, they had kids, so they were cemented down there. So that really validates, that document right there validates the connection that, you know, we've been talking about.
Well, and it's our contention that, you know, like Ken said, the brothers were in Mexico right after the escape. They're flown down there. They hang out there for a couple of years on the farm, laying low. And then in 1964, we've talked about this several times about Alfred's untimely demise, most likely at the hands of the FBI during an, you know, aggressive interrogation. Probably Uncle Man let them know what had happened about the brother's death. And they realize they could be vulnerable because they don't know if Alfred talked or not. So they have to assume that he did. And then they go down to, that's what got them down to Brazil, was the fear that the FBI was on their heels.
Yeah.
In 1964.
It's kind of like what we've always said, you know, even going down into Mexico, Fred Breezy is the one who flies him down there. You don't just fly into a place, another country. You know where to stop to get gas. That's crazy. You know where you're going. I mean, he's already been there multiple times. Had to have been for him to know where he was going. And to go into Brazil, you're not, I mean, anybody, just stop and think about this logically. If you were on the run, I don't care what you had done, you're going to go into another country and you're just going to show up. I don't care how much money you have. How are you going to survive? You know, I mean, they go into another country like Brazil. They undoubtedly had to have some type of connection. There was this, just as Mickey Cohen had a farm in Mexico, he had some connection in Brazil. And this farm that we have been told that the brothers, you know, purchased from this Englishman, and it was already established. I really believe when we find the true part of this story, it was a farm that Mickey Cohen already owned. And when we are able to find out this piece of the information, I believe that when we go down to Brazil, which we are going.
Yeah, we're going.
When we go down to Brazil, if we have this piece of information about the farm, we're going to be able to backtrack into not only who owned this farm to begin with, but who owned it when they were there and then who they sold it to. Because eventually they sold it to someone. They didn't own it all the way up until their death. So we're going to find this out.
My question is, because like we've seen, you know, I've seen so many, in addition to the volumes of, you know, government documents that you and Mike have and have gotten for the Alcatraz thing, you know, and I've seen a lot of other types of cases and stuff like that. And a case like this that's, you know, 60 plus years old, you know, I'm almost thinking that, is there any unredacted documents there?
You know,
well, Art has talked about having the unredacted Alcatraz report. He's made reference to it to Ken. Ken has asked for it, and he won't give it to him. Got it.
You
so
know,
he validates that there are unredacted documents.
Well, he has the unredacted. According to him, he has the unredacted 17 volumes that we in the public has today that are redacted.
Mm-hmm.
But I still go back to saying, what in the hell is the problem with giving us, the family, an unredacted copy of the version of the FBI file? What is it? And even with Mickey Cohen, what are you trying to hide?
Yeah.
This is a 65-year-old case. What are you trying to protect?
Well, you know, it's the gag reflex of the government. I mean, they do it with everything. They've done it with the JFK stuff, even the stuff that they're releasing. This stuff is heavily redacted, you know, and dealing with the Epstein files right now. And it's like, everything is, it looks like it's all blotch. There's nothing, you can't really read these things. Like you saw Mike reading that. It's like every other sentence is, you can't even put together a paragraph.
Right. I mean, why is it that after 65 almost years that this is such a mystery?
Yeah.
It would almost kind of like be you reading an FBI piece of, say, Amelia Earhart, and it's redacted. Why are you redacting something that no one is still alive today that can do anything about it?
Like I said, I think it's their gag reflex. They don't want information getting out. And it's either, it's like, just like if you look at the whole thing with the UAP, UFO stuff, they said that they had a bunch of experts around the world when all this stuff was coming out years ago, and they, like the scientists and politicians, and they basically polled them, and they read them into all the information, and they basically said, do you think it would benefit the public if the public knew the truth about all this information? And a high percentage of them said, no, don't release it. They won't know how to process it in the same way. And I think they think we're children, and they feel like it's going to upset the apple cart. It's going to cause some sort of political rift or loss of illusion of what people are really living and talking about and how they're leading their lives, and it caused floods and riots and stuff like that, and it's just like I really don't think they understand that eventually this shit's going to come out, whether it's about Alcatraz, we're pounding the door on that, and fortunately not many people have the firsthand experience and knowledge that you have, Ken, because you're related to them, and you and Mike have been such great detectives to try to get all this stuff out there. But I think they really don't. They really think like they say, they think the public is the great unwashed. We're not really, we don't know how to handle information. That's why we always get spoon-fed information all the time. And for some reason, I can understand why they think that way. Because, but at this point, information is like so readily available. And it's like, that's what they did to the journalist that he was locked up in the British embassy.
Armand Assange?
No, yeah, Assange. Julian Assange.
Yes.
Julian Assange. I mean, it's like, and he's, he had to basically cut a deal with the world governments to say he's not going to say anything just so he could leave there, because he had all these death threats. And and that's about a lot of the information. He has a lot of information. My God, if I could read minds right now, that's the guy's mind I would love to read, because he's got all of the information, because it's about the NSA, about all the politicians. I mean, he was able to get a lot of it, and and he's had to be in exile, and fortunately he's back, I think, in Australia. He moved back to, he's in Australia, but he wants to talk too. He wants to put all this stuff out there. But, it's just that the world politicians and the people that control the information, it's just like, that's how they feel like if they give that stuff up, they don't no longer control anybody.
It's power.
Exactly.
It's like I would want to tell any politician, the Trump administration, I don't care who it is, we are adults. We're not children. I can handle the truth. And, that always, reminds me of that movie, you can't handle the truth.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I can handle the truth. I'm not some little child
that
we're dealing with here. And so, it's just like art. Art sometimes it came across as like, okay, I know things that you don't know, and you have no clue what I know. Okay, share it with me. And it's this power struggle that they have, is they want to keep it over you. They want to be able to say, I know something that you don't know. No, really and truly, you don't. I mean, me and Mike, with one hand tied behind our back, have been able to figure this damn thing out. Even though you might have hid stuff from us, we were able to uncover the truth about what happened at Alcatraz and what happened to my uncles. So why don't you just come clean and tell us, give us the information that we want. What are you trying to hide?
Yeah, I mean, and it has no consequence now. There's no what is the consequence? Anybody that was involved in that are dead, and it's like there won't be any kind of earth. What's the biggest earth shattering? Oh, the government covered it up. I mean, give me a break. I mean, it's like, a perfect example is that I remember I was watching Joe Rogan and they had Bill Murray on. The comedian, and he was talking, they go down a bunch of rabbit holes and stuff like that. And they were talking about John Belushi because he was very close to John Belushi. And he was talking about how he, what's his name? Bob Woodward wrote the book about John Belushi and his, pivotal decline and death from addiction or an overdose and stuff like that. And he had cited all these people, these sources that he got all this information from. And Bill Murray was there. Bill Murray knew all these people. And Bill Murray was like, those people didn't know anything about John. He goes, when I read the first 20 pages of this book, and he goes, the first thing that came to mind was like, he framed Nixon. That's what he said. He goes, I can't believe a word out of this guy's mouth, and then you go back to, and then I had no idea about this, but, Bob Woodward went from being a naval intelligence officer to a prime job at the Washington Post with one of their top journalists, Bernstein. It's like, how do you jump that leap? So it's like they think the American public, they think people in general are fools, and they definitely don't want just any kind of information comes out, like the recent tragedy of this Charlie Kirk guy who just, who was assassinated, and then immediately the information tornado happens, and you're never sure what to believe, and you won't find out what really happened or what the consequences about this 10 years later, maybe if you look at it. And then by that time, information's so diluted and there's so many reports and there's so many other things that goes on that it's like, you don't know what to think. And at that point, they dilute it so much where you really can't even validate it or prove it. And then people just go on there and deny.
Well, and you stop and think about, Alcatraz, when it occurred, it's not the first escape that had occurred in the history of the United States. There were other escapes that occurred. You could probably go out and find tons of other escapes that happened in the 50s and the 40s and probably the 60s. None of them are redacted. None of them are covered up. It's like, why are you redacting this piece of history? And why are you redacting pieces of Mickey Cohen? To me, I think it's all kind of related to JFK. You redacted the JFK assassination. You redacted Alcatraz. You redacted the Mickey Cohen. Is there some relationship between all three of these stories?
Well, we know. We know.
Redacting it.
We know for a fact that Mickey Cohen and Jack Ruby and Candy Barr, I mean, there's articles out there where Candy Barr, like I said, I spoke to, who was it, Jack Ruby's lawyer, the daughter of Jack Ruby's lawyer.
Right.
I won't say her name or anything, but she knew a lot about Candy Barr. She has nothing to do with the mob or anything. She has a completely job that's completely, but when she was growing up, when she was going to college, she spent a lot of time in her father's law office because her father wanted her to be a lawyer just like him and kind of take over the practice. But she said there was a lot of shenanigans and a lot of secret meetings and a lot of that going on at that time. And she went on to say all these other things about the JFK assassination and Conley and stuff like that, which is it's a rabbit hole that Stuart Fillmore would love to dive down because that's his subject matter. Actually, when I got off the phone, I called him. I said, "Listen, she said this," and he's like, "Wow," because I've never heard that before. And so, because Yeah, I just don't. I agree with you. I think that, and I think one of the things that we hope to do in this, or what we're going to do in the television documentary series, is really kind of road test all these ideas and really kind of try to connect the dots and figure out why, like you said, why is all this so secretive at this point?
You think about the FBI piece of this, and even Art commented on this. The FBI keeps the investigation open for almost 18 years. 18 years before they give it to the U.S. Marshal to go find them. If I was a U.S. Marshal when they turned it over, I thought, okay, so you gave the fugitives 18-year head start before you gave it to me to go find them. Has that ever happened in the history of our nation?
No.
When the U.S. Marshals were founded, has the FBI ever took 18 years to investigate something before they gave it to the U.S. Marshals to go find the people that they were investigating?
No.
Never.
No, there's a prison escape. The U.S. Marshals are the first ones. They're the first ones called.
Yes. It's almost kind of like even today's time, if there was a prison escape, the FBI, from a federal prison, the FBI is probably called. The U.S. Marshals will probably have it in 2 days, 3 days. They're in the process of finding these individuals. 18 years before they ever give it to the U.S. Marshals. What were you doing for 18 years? Can anybody please explain that to me? Even Art Roderick, who was the second U.S. Marshal to work this case, said that has never happened in the history of this United States. 18 years.
Yeah.
Let that sink in for just a minute.
Well, and one of the things that Art said when he got the case, because he was he's retired U.S. Marshal, and it was his case for a number of years, was he said he only received a few pages.
Yeah.
So, there's actually, I added them up because one of the things that, connecting back to the show is there's a person on your team that asked for the FBI files, the redacted ones, of course. And so I just said, well, happy reading, 1,700 pages. It's a very big file. Well, I thought, how many pages? It's actually over 1,850 pages. I was undercounting it a little bit. And one of the things that Art said was he was only given a few pages of that, and he had to spend time and resources to get more and more and more and more of it to get the full picture from the FBI. So even the FBI, even though they gave it to him, they weren't really fully cooperating.
Taking on a DIY job around the house is the ultimate summer project. But if your DIY home security system is a beware of dog sign, when your real pet is Princess the cat, that's safe-ish. To be actually safe, help protect your home with a DIY system from ADT. It's easy to install and gives you virtual assistance from ADT's technical support team. Best of all, you can tell everyone in the neighborhood you set it up yourself. Don't settle for safe-ish this summer. DIY with ADT instead. Visit ADT.com to learn more.
Running a business comes with a lot of what-ifs. But luckily, there's a simple answer to them. Shopify. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses, including Thrive Cosmetics and Momofuku, and it'll help you with everything you need. From website design and marketing to boosting sales and expanding operations, Shopify can get the job done and make your dream a reality. Turn those what-ifs into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
Disney Plus wants to know, are you ready? For Marvel Studios' Thunderbolts, The New Avengers, now streaming on Disney Plus.
Let's do this.
One of the best Marvel movies of all time is now streaming on Disney Plus.
Hey, you weren't listening to me.
I said Thunderbolts, The New Avengers is now streaming on Disney Plus.
Meet the New Avengers.
That's a cool name.
Marvel Studios' Thunderbolts, The New Avengers, rated PG-13, now streaming on, you guessed it, Disney Plus.
Subtle results, still you, but with fewer lines. Botox Cosmetic, out of botulinum toxin A, is a prescription medicine used to temporarily make moderate to severe frown lines, crow's feet, and forehead lines look better in adults.
Effects of Botox Cosmetic may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness may be a sign of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Don't receive Botox Cosmetic if you have a skin infection. Side effects may include allergic reactions, injection site pain, headache, eyebrow and eyelid drooping, and eyelid swelling. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Tell your doctor about medical history, muscle or nerve conditions including ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects. For full safety information, visit BotoxCosmetic.com or call 877-351-0300.
See for yourself at BotoxCosmetic.com.
It's crazy. It's the weirdest story I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, it just reeks of just bureaucratic cover up and malaise of or just kind of put it in a box, put it in a back room, wait for time to just forget about it.
It is the exact same story that the JFK was, right?
Yeah.
They knew what had happened supposedly to JFK. They redacted everything. They said, we'll reveal it to the public, years and years. Even the Congress agreed to it. Years and years later. And even now, even today, even the Trump administration, I'm sorry, I like this administration. I agree with a lot of things that they do. But even today, they refuse to release everything.
I know. Well, I think
it's not been released.
I think there's this box in DC that's in this warehouse somewhere, and they have this, dog or some guy sitting on top of it for the past 100 years, and you can't get to it. It's just this lockbox and there's these are all our secrets: the UFO files, the JFK files, the Alcatraz files, the Epstein files, and then everybody's just sitting there, and and it's a joke when they say, well, we're going to release it all, and then they spit out dribs and drabs. I don't understand how with Alcatraz, JFK, and those older cases and stuff like that, no one's really, other than just the people that were alive now are kids. They were kids. They were children when they were there. They had but for the stuff that's current, I understand because it implicates a lot of people. And, these Epstein files they're talking about, there's a lot of people that probably are going to be implicated. And, and you get into that. The thing that was really interesting is when Cindy and I, we were working down at National Geographic. We had a year contract down there. So we were basically living down there, and we were living in just pretty close to the Arlington Cemetery. And so, the DC is a beautiful area. Virginia, beautiful. Everything's very close. We could walk to the Lincoln Monument, and it's very close. We're right near. But we would every Sunday or Saturday we would canoe down the Potomac, when it was nice out. And what people don't realize is that, DC is probably one of the most wealthiest areas in the country. Along the Potomac, I couldn't believe the size of the houses and the mansions that lined the Potomac all the way down. And I'm sitting there, and I know everybody does this when they're driving through a neighborhood. You're like, what the frig did these people do? We're talking 20, 25,000 square foot homes. And I'm like, what could they possibly, because it's the government jobs don't pay that much. The president, he's the top. I think he makes $400,000. Yeah. And then the senators and congressmen, they're working, I think they're making 175, maybe 185, just under 200,000, And then you have all of these major mansions and stuff like that. And so it's there's this underlying thing that no one wants to reveal, because once you get in the club, you're just all right, well, no, let's just don't show them the files, because don't get about. And there's been instances where people have been paid to silence, whether they have information. Scientists who discover certain things that may change the economics of the world, and or the invention or something like that. And they will get contacted by the government. So listen, we'll pay you $10 million every year for the rest of your life if you just sit on this information and don't tell anybody. And so I think that that's what happens. People are just paid off to keep their mouths shut, either paid off or, unfortunately, sometimes there's people disappear.
My wife asked me this exact same question that you just said several years ago when I started down this path. And I started uncovering things, even with Mike. And my wife said, are you worried that at some point in time you might get close to something that they don't want revealed and it threatens your life or my life? And, I really thought about that because there have been many times, Rob, many times that I know as I started down this journey, I found out through one of the U.S. Marshals, they were still listening to my phone calls. They were listening to members of my family's phone calls. Even in 2012, they were still following us and listening to us. And it really made me stop and think, what kind of jeopardy am I putting myself and my family in? If this truly was something that was meant to be covered and not uncovered, what am I putting myself in? But I believe there is a point in time that people in the United States need to know the truth.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to go down this path. I want to know what happened to my uncles. I want to know the government involvement because I really believe they were involved in this. Somehow, you don't involve the Supreme Court justice.
I know. I was just going to say that. That to me is just
involve the governor of Texas. You don't involve people that were in the know, like Mickey Cohen, and all. How does all of that tie in to the escape from Alcatraz? And there is a connection there.
Yeah. What do you think, Mike?
Did I scare you, Mike?
No. I've thought about that too. Hitting too close to home to somebody. For me, it's we talked about this before that you speculate, you have the little pieces of the puzzle here and there, and you're trying to form a picture that's incomplete, and you extrapolate what you think that the trail leads you to. And the speculation sounds reasonable. It could be true. For me, I need more pieces to go there.
You need more pieces for what to go where?
Is there a direct connection to JFK? With Mickey Cohen and the brothers, did they see something? Did they see Oswald in Mexico when they were hiding out? It's possible. That's the speculation. Maybe it's just speculation. And so for me, I would want more tangible proof or evidence to show that is what actually happened.
Well, what we do know is that there's less than a 6-degree separation between the brothers and the people that were involved in some of the JFK activities, like Mickey Cohen and Jack Ruby and Candy Barr. We know for a fact. So it's like that. It's less than. I think it's like a 2 degrees of separation. So that right there is really interesting. So, and like I said, when we started talking about that connection, I felt the same way you did, Mike, because, I've had 10 different people pitch me JFK documentaries, and everyone said they had the missing link and the smoking gun. And every time I would listen to them, and they would have an interview from somebody, a groundskeeper near the grassy knoll or something, someone who saw this, or a woman who was, had her kid in a baby carriage or something like that saw this, or someone sitting in the car and stuff like that. The problem is that subject is so diluted with misinformation, and and the fact that even to the fact that one of the reasons why they wanted JFK out of there because he didn't want to go into Vietnam, and and LBJ had a stake in the company that made Huey helicopters, and he knew that he was going to make a ton of money, selling helicopters to the government, and he had interest in there. So you have all those elements, and the fact that they, just like in the when the actually assassination happened in Dallas, how they picked that one street, who picks the street that he drives down in an open car, all that stuff. I mean, it was like there's a lot of things that don't make sense, and you can actually parallel it with the attempted assassination of Trump, where you can say the networks never covered any of his rallies, but that day CNN covered it. All the other ones that don't like Trump covered that rally, and they covered it live. And the fact that there's a pimply faced kid is able to get on top of a building, and they had snipers on top of the building above Trump, and they were higher than the kid on the building, and they didn't see him. But when I was watching it live, and I saw when he was identified, that shot, that sniper, he hesitated until the kid shot off another shot, and then he shot him and took him out. And he got reprimanded because he did that. And no one's heard of this guy's name again. And I think I don't even know if he's in the Secret Service anymore. And because I've asked my friends who were in government and Secret Service, I go, there was a tower behind them that was higher than anything else. I go, why wasn't anybody up there? Why wasn't the survey done? It's like, it was very, it was like all those things. And then you put on your tinfoil hat. You don't want to put on the tinfoil hat, but just logic of asking these questions, like the logic that we've been asking with the questions with Alcatraz, that just, when it doesn't pass the logic test,
right,
that's a red flag. And then when you want to verify whether or not it's do it, and then you request for documents many, many, many years over, and then you get the documents and they're redacted, or you have Art saying, well, no, I know what really happened. And then, but, why can't you talk? You're retired. I mean, what is there to protect at this point? And
and that's where I came from when we went down this as an IT data scientist. I was always trained to look at the logical data. I want to look at what could logically happen. And when my Uncle Man, who was a totally uneducated, poor individual, he knew Mickey Cohen, who was this famous mobster. And then all of a sudden you start looking into Mickey Cohen, and he's given a bond hearing from the Supreme Court Justice of the United States. You will never, ever find that in any situation whatsoever.
Never happened.
Never happened. Even the U.S. Marshals, Art Roderick, the Stewart from the FBI, they have never heard of that ever happening.
Yeah.
And by the way, he is the same person who then follows up and is headed the Warren Commission on the JFK assassination.
And basically, approved of the magic bullet theory.
Yes. And then you have, Mickey Cohen is friends with Candy Barr, her wannabe girlfriend, and Jack Ruby. She claims to have seen Jack Ruby and Oswald together coming out of Mexico. She even says it. And then all of a sudden you start putting these things together. Yeah, I know. I agree with Mike. Not everything is a smoking gun. Not every piece of item that we're talking about. But every piece of item points to the same direction. Just like Mike said, everything that we have uncovered, not one piece about the Alcatraz escape ever says they went north. Every single thing we've uncovered points to them going south into Mexico and eventually into Brazil.
Yeah.
So you have to, as a logical thinking person, go, what is going on here? is this in any way related to the JFK? When we started down this road, and Mike will tell you, when we started writing this book and I started uncovering this stuff, I started coming to him and saying, Mike, do you see what is being uncovered in our, did I not say this multiple times? And Mike kept saying, Ken, you're seeing things that might not be there. We don't want to put this in the book. We don't want to make it this conspiracy theory. And I said, Mike, I'm not making this up. I'm just telling you what I see.
Yes, Ken definitely wanted more of the JFK element in the book. And it wasn't so much I didn't see it. It was more of, when you write a book, you have to tell a main story.
Yeah.
And you have to cut out things that are attached to it, but they're not the main thrust of, the main ideas of what you want to talk about. It was the same thing with MK Ultra. Ken wanted to have, because his uncle Alfred was an MK Ultra, Whitey Bulger was an MK Ultra, and he referenced it very heavily in his letters. He talked a lot about that and that experience and what it did to him. And I said that it's kind of the same idea. It's like, it's interesting, and it's an interesting connection to the story, but it's not the main story.
Yeah.
So we had to keep those things out and just focus on Alcatraz.
Yeah, and that's going to be our challenge with this series, is trying to figure out what to put in it, because there's so much. And there's, and like I said, you can go off and veer off in directions, but you can veer off in directions because there's information pointing in that direction.
Well, and one of the things that we talked about off air, as you were kind of sharing the updates of what's going on with the TV show, was you had in reality too much information for the network.
Yeah.
And you had to pare it down to keep it to fit within the parameters of what they want to do for the show.
And then what you can realistically tell in a story, and for, in television, what most people in an hour programming is only like 43 minutes and 20 seconds. That's usually what it is, because they take out a bunch for commercials. So you're really looking at, even though it's 4 hours on, the network, it's really a lot less than that. So you really, and that's how we deal with it as far as, program time. Like whenever, I'm given a show to do, I look up, all right, well, how much program time do I have to fill up? And that's where I start. I go, well, if I have 4 episodes and I know I can kind of, do this A, B, and C. If I have 1, I have to really be economical and tell the best story possible, and so in a much shorter period of time. And I've had those where, I've given them 2 episodes or a 90-minute episode, and they go, well, we can't fit it in there. So can you make it just 45? And I'm like, wow. I go, and then you got to, as they say, for lack of a better term, you're killing puppies. You have to go in there It's a horrible statement to say, because I love dogs, but you really have to take those items that you really love, that are great story elements that really could open up the story even more, and you have to truncate them, you have to remove them, and then. But yeah, that's going to be the huge challenge with this show. But I'm glad we have it to try.
Well, and you've said how enthusiastic they are about the show.
Yeah.
Especially in this culture where, we had COVID a few years ago, and that really hurt a lot of the shows in the networks. And then we had the writer's strike not long after that, and that really put a damper on a lot of programming. And
it changed the industry, really. Those 2 events really kind of changed the industry, because people started, it's when people started doing podcasts and doing programming on YouTube, and they realized, well, we don't really, it kind of, the gatekeepers that I've been dealing with for the past, 25 years in this business, they were kind of removed. And people can kind of get things out there and produce stuff. Like, one of the reasons we started this podcast is because we had we did a television series for Oxygen, and it was just one case, the Molly Miller and Colt Haynes mysterious disappearance. They just vanished in Oklahoma. And we felt, that was the one I was telling you about. We did like a 90-minute version, and they said, well, we only can do 45. And I'm like, and then we did it. And then we're like, there's more to do here. And we contacted the family, said, listen, we want to help. We feel like there's so much more story here. We feel like we can help with the getting this information out. And so we did it, a podcast version, and that was basically the impetus of what started. But what happened is because we were still coming off COVID, and so there was nothing going on. So it's like, Cindy and I we're storytellers, we're kind of investigative journalists, and so we needed to kind of get this stuff out here. And the podcast world was a very inviting platform where we could do what we wanted to do without any gatekeepers. We can get it out there, whether someone watched it or not. We were able to, and people did watch it because we're like 4 years into this now, and you're our 4th season. We've had 6 seasons of podcasts. We have a bunch of different subjects. So it has enabled us to really kind of explore these subjects. We've been exploring this subject for a year now. This is episode 70, 70 of like 300 of that we have. So, and we were able to not only secure a deal for this one, television deal, but we have one going now with another one. And so we have 2 of them. One is kind of like we're still cooking on it, but it's been a blessing that we're able to do this and get your story out there. And now we're going to get it out in the masses. And I think one of the things that we were talking about on our calls with the network is that it was really interesting how they want us to really kind of tell this story the way we want to tell it. So, which is great. And then you're going to see, we can talk a little bit about that. We have a little bit of time left, but you're going to, just for our audiences, you're going to see a lot of the same people you saw on the podcast. You're going to see some new people. You're going to see some new faces. You're going to travel with us down to Brazil. Obviously we're going to go to Alcatraz. We've been to Alcatraz before, but we're going to go there again under a different conceit. And we're really going to, beat all this information out. And hopefully this will be the last definitive documentary series on Alcatraz, unless Art, like he said he knows what really happened. He's holding on to information, and hopefully we'll see if he'll want to reveal that to us.
Well, and one of the benefits of doing the show as it goes out on the airwaves, into the Ethernet, people have come to us with information, which we've talked about in past episodes. Mm-hmm. And one of the benefits of the upcoming TV show is that we can explore firsthand that information. We can go to the sources of that information. It's not being told to us, but we can actually go there and talk to the people and go to those places and see what information that yields for us to hopefully get the final answers that we're looking for.
Yeah. I agree. It's very exciting. It's like when we started this journey with you, like over a year ago, when we were talking about this, and I had a vision. Like after I read you guys' book, I had a vision. And this was and they talk about manifestation and stuff like that, and I really feel like we've manifested this.
I agree.
Because it's been kind of, I don't know, Matthew McConaughey wrote this book about green lights. It's all about green lights. It's just when you think in those terms, when you're presenting these obstacles and you turn that stop sign into a green light, you just visualize it that it's a green light and that's not a red light. And I don't know if I'm bastardizing the version of his book, but that's the message I got from him. And so I keep on telling Cindy, it's like whenever we feel like we're frustrated and when we are waiting for things to happen with this and whatever we were doing as far as information from Brazil or anything like that, we were talking to him and I just said green lights, and he just think of green lights, and that's what we kept on doing. And that's now we're in the green light mode, and we got green lit.
Yeah, well, and the nice thing is, as when Art came on, that when he was a U.S. Marshal, that if there was a big case that he was working on, and you're getting all these tips, people are hundreds, thousands of tips. Well, they can't possibly follow every single tip that they get, and they know not all of them are credible. Some of them are just people who think they know what happened, or they're just lying for whatever reason. But the word that he used was actionable. Is there something actionable here? Can we go talk to this person, or can we go to this place, or can we look for this piece of evidence that will help in the case in some way. And that's the information that we've already previously uncovered, and now have new information that is actionable. And I think that's what, for the network, I think that's what ultimately sold them on it. Is it's not just a third-hand account of somebody else's idea of what happened. We have specific things that we can look for and specific people we can talk to, to corroborate the information and hopefully lead us to the answers that we're looking for.
Yeah, and unlike Art, when he was a U.S. Marshal, he had a particular focus, and he had an amazing career at the U.S. Marshals. I mean, Art he was a great public servant, and I know a lot of the same people that worked in the Marshals that worked underneath him and stuff, and everybody has nothing but great things to say about it. And I really like Art. I think he's a stand-up guy, but he's also got limitations on what he can talk about and say and reveal, where we don't have those limitations.
Nope.
So we can, if we find out information and we feel that it's valid and fits within the purpose of our story and our investigation, we're going to put it out there. Yep. And because, like I said, I texted Ken the other day. Some gentleman put something online. I won't say what it was or anything like that, and then he had a piece of information that we have, and I'm like, how did this person get this information? I go, who is this guy? And then he's like, oh yeah, I know who that guy is. And he goes, well, the person who gave it to me also put it all over the internet. So it's like, so there you have it. It's like, there's information out there, and whether or not you want to receive it and interpret it, and you basically run with it and validate it, then you have that opportunity. But like I said, Art was governed by the government, and I'm sure there was stuff that maybe he would have loved to have told you, Ken, but he can't. Right. And so that's the challenge of what his position is, because I think he still has a security clearance.
I'm sure he does. So,
some of the guys I know that, like I think Stewart doesn't have a security clearance anymore. I mean, I'm not sure if Lenny still has his. He may still have, but Art, I'm convinced still has, has a security clearance. So if he reveals certain things, he can lose his security clearance, and he doesn't want to do that because, when you've been doing it that long, you want to be able to be read in on stuff. You want to know what's going on.
Yep.
So, and you never know when information cases that he worked on in the past that may pop up, that they may need to come to him because he was the person who was working at the time. So.
No, I completely understand Art's position. I have a lot of respect for Art. I can still consider him a friend. And, if he called me up today and said, hey, let's go to the bar and have a few drinks, absolutely I would.
Sure. He's a good man. He's a good man. He dedicated his life.
I mean, man, and I don't want people to think that, I don't like Art. I definitely like Art. And like you said, I understand his position, and
it's a friendly rivalry, it's a friendly rivalry. It's like,
has some very good debates, but at the end of the day, we're still friends.
Yeah, of course. And, well, that's cool. Well, it's been interesting. So all we can say, people, is just, we're hoping to give you, updates on what's going on. And but like I said, this train is running. Today's day one.
Yeah, this is what's known as pre-production.
Exactly. Day one.
Yeah.
More to come.
All right, guys. We'll talk next week.
Okay.
All right, bye.